And stand by, Jilly. We're almost ready for you. Thank you for waiting.
Andrea, I'm on. Sorry. I have to press update.
Yay. Okay.
All right. So we have everybody. I think we have everybody. All right. So call to order this regular meeting of the Los Altos City Council for Tuesday, January 11th. It is now 7:17. Thank you all for your patience. City Clerk, would you please establish quorum?
Yes. Councilmember Flagler,
Here.
Councilmember Lee Ing,
Here.
Councilmember Weinberg,
Here.
Vice Mayor Meadows,
Here.
Mayor Enander.
Here.
Thank you. The full council is present.
And we have with us tonight Jilly Jose, and you are with Troop 60199, right? And she is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So would you all please mute yourselves except for
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. That was beautifully done, wonderfully articulated, where we could hear every single word. Congratulations. What grade are you in?
First grade.
First grade. And where do you go to school?
Ghana.
You're at Bullis. Good. Thank you very much for coming tonight and leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. You have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night. So we had a closed session and we have nothing to report out from our closed session. Is there anyone on council who would like to propose a change to any item in the order of the agenda? I don't see anybody saying anything. Clerk, do we have any public comments on items not on the agenda?
I have a member of the public with their hand raised. Looks like a call-in member at 9767 are the last four digits. And actually now I've got a couple of more hands going up. Three members.
Okay, so anyone, if you wish to make comments on something not on the agenda, please raise your hand. I'll give you a few more seconds.
So far I see four hands raised.
Okay, let's give them each 3 minutes.
Okay, our first speaker would be a phone-in speaker, 9767.
It appears still to be on mute.
Yes, I've asked them to unmute. Oh, there we go. They should be able to speak.
You said it was a phone number. Is it me?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. This is Frank Martin speaking. I'm ready to go whenever you are.
Go ahead, Frank.
My name is Frank Martin, and I've lived in Los Altos since 1976. Although this item has been pulled from the agenda, which is item 6, waiver of rental fees for the Los Altos Town Crier, I am deeply concerned how it got on the agenda in the first place. I read the staff report, which was very well documented, and I'm shocked to learn that the rental fees for taxpayers or residents is much higher than any other group. Please explain why this is the case. It appears that nonprofits like not like the Rotary Club or the other groups somehow get a discount that residents cannot. This doesn't seem to be very fair to residents and looks more like quid pro quo in terms of some kind of special favors. More importantly, please explain how and why this council or staff interacted with the Los Altos Town Crier to place this item on the agenda and how or why it was pulled. Knowing how this council operates, I'm sure it would have passed if it was on the agenda. It appears to be a real case of quid pro quo where council members in favor get good press and others that oppose do not. Somehow this has got to stop. I hope voters are keeping score because this is what leads to corruption in a town like Los Altos. Thank you for your patience and time.
Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Our next speaker is Janet Corrigan, followed by Roberta. Janet?
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor Meadows, and City Council members for an opportunity to address you. I'm a resident and homeowner in Los Altos, and I'd like to share my thoughts in my capacity as a private citizen and not as a member of an advisory body to the City Council. I am concerned that there has not been adequate notice of the Los Altos housing element update. Many residents I've spoken to have no idea what the housing element is about, nor do they know about the virtual community workshop scheduled for Thursday. A quick way to validate that what I'm saying is true would be to walk downtown and simply ask any resident what they know about the housing element. Given the importance of this issue for Los Altos, I wanted to suggest that there be an increased focus on developing and executing a comprehensive communication strategy for engaging the community. One model could be what was done in February of 2020 to solicit input from residents about a dog park. In that case, there were 4 workshops where the city staff did a great job getting the word out through flyers, postcard mailers, and other social media communications. Another option, perhaps, is to engage residents who are experienced marketers and are willing to share their expertise. Lastly, all messaging, I think, needs to be concise and inform residents in a way that tells them why they should care about this topic. Thank you for your consideration, and if I can be of any assistance, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Corrigan.
Our next speaker is Roberta. Roberta?
Hi, this is Roberta, and I'm a resident of Los Altos. And I am very, very concerned about what happened at the last city council meeting. The mayor has the responsibility of assigning people to various different posts. And at the city's association, Nisa Flygore somehow is now getting 2 bites of the apple, and the mayor, who usually has that seat, is not. And there really is something very, very wrong, because if the president of the United States is to nominate a judge and Congress is to approve it and they don't approve it, then the seat remains empty. And Congress cannot then go and nominate somebody else. So I don't think that council has followed trying to nominate Nisa for that position. There's something very, very wrong with that process. And I really think that the city needs to go back, speak to the attorneys, get legal advice, because Anita Eander has served on the legislative committee here in Los Altos. She's done a wonderful job. I've heard Sally Meadows thank her profusely and said she would run out of the room with her hair on fire if she had to do that job. And I think that it would be gracious of Nisa to step back, keep her position that she has on the executive board, so she'll still be there. And council needs to relook at this, because it just doesn't seem right at all. It doesn't seem like you follow procedures at all. And the whole thing is very questionable for me. So you can answer me now, but I really think that you need to, and the city manager and the attorney needs to look at this situation, because there's something really wrong going on here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips.
Our next speaker is Ann Paulson, followed by Joe Bedinato.
Good evening, City Council. This is Ann Paulson. Thanks for the opportunity to speak again. Last month, the City Council passed an Sb9 ordinance. This month, staff implemented something different and considerably more restrictive. For example, the City Council followed the state law in saying that applicants who want to split a lot must file an ownership affidavit, which means developers can't split lots. The staff, on the other hand, requires everyone who wants to use Sb9 to sign an ownership affidavit, even if they're not splitting a lot. This would bar developers from putting two houses on a lot, which is nowhere in the resolution, and it is nowhere in the state law. Also, the City Council resolution said that someone couldn't use Sb9 if their property is listed as a historic resource. This is following the state law again. The staff has applicants go through a Baroque procedure involving hiring an architect and waiting 2 months to fill out a detailed form on their property showing whether their property could be listed as a historic resource. That's irrelevant. If the property isn't listed, even if it could be, it doesn't matter whether it could be listed, the applicant is still entitled to use Sb9. Now, I hope this was not done intentionally by someone who doesn't like Sb9 and wanted to illegitimately prevent people from using it. In any case, staff should remedy this at once, and I'd like to hear how we will prevent this from occurring in the future. I should be able to trust city staff to implement what the City Council passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Paulson.
Our next speaker is Joe Bedinato.
And this will be our last speaker.
Yes. Mr. Bedinato?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thanks. I was waiting for the unmute thing to pop up. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. There have been a number of letters to the editor and public comments that have misrepresented the facts regarding the board appointments to the Cities Association of Santa Clara County. I'd like to clarify the facts. First, the majority of board members listed on the website of the Cities Association of Santa Clara County are not the mayors of their respective cities. Today, I counted at least 9 board members who are not mayors. So any statements regarding the board being made up solely of mayors or even a majority of mayors are simply not true. And we are in a transition phase where mayors are coming on and going off. So I suspect there might be some changes there, but currently it is not true. Second, I've seen some statements that appointing someone other than the mayor as a Los Altos representative on the board of the Cities Association is unprecedented. Once again, the facts show that this is also false. We only need to go back to 2019 when Jan Peppers served on the board in place of then Mayor Lynette Liang. In 6 of the last 15 years, the mayor of Los Altos has not been appointed to the board of the Cities Association. That is 40% of the time, which is a long way from never. As Senator Daniel Moynihan once said, you are entitled to your opinion, but you are not entitled to your own facts. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Bedinato. And so I'll close public comment and we'll move to the consent calendar. Is there anything that anybody wants to pull from the consent calendar? I don't see any hands. Going once, going twice. Councilmember Flagger.
Thank you, Mayor Enander. And I don't want to pull anything from the consent calendar, but I do want to thank our colleagues for the questions they submitted regarding the internship program. You and I are the subcommittee. And so I don't think we need to take any formal action here at this meeting, but I thought there were some good questions and suggestions and I wanted to acknowledge it.
And I will second your comments and will also be happy to take a motion to move.
So moved.
Consent calendar. Do I have a second? I see Councilmember Weinberg has his hand raised.
Second.
Councilmember Weinberg seconds. And so City Clerk, would you please call the vote for the consent calendar?
Yes. Vice Mayor Meadows,
Yes.
Councilmember Lee Eng,
Yes.
Councilmember Weinberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Fliger,
Yes.
and Mayor Enander.
Yes.
Thank you. It passes 5-0.
And this evening, we have no public hearings, so we will move to the discussion item number 7. As previously mentioned, number 6 was withdrawn. Item number 7 regarding the establishment of dog park. And I'm going to first turn this over for introduction to the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I will turn this over to our facilities director in just a moment. I wanted to provide a brief introduction to the topic. So this has been a really long process, longer for the community than me. I'm only coming in at the very tail end of it. As you know, we just completed a trial off-leash program on the Civic Center property. That trial started after really thoughtful and successful outreach and engagement from the Parks and Rec Commission. And following the conclusion of the off-leash trial, and after reviewing the results, the City Council directed staff to select 2 areas to consider for permanent dog parks, geographically balanced, one in the south, one in the north part of the city. Staff used the objective criteria found in the park's master plan and applied them to the sites to be considered. We've gotten a lot of public comment on this, and that's because the process has been so long, it feels like almost every area of the city has already been explored, meaning some areas have a really good history and positive during their time in the public spotlight, and some have more of a negative connotation. However, for tonight, we provided a recommended and alternate location for each geographic area of the city. The City Council is being asked to discuss the recommended or alternate locations tonight. To the extent Council would like another park or location considered, we would be happy to bring back more information on any other locations at a future meeting. And before I give it to our Recreation Director, I've asked our Facilities Director to address 2 concerns that we've heard throughout the process, but were also received in some of the public comment. And the first one is, will the trees be damaged if the Mckinsey Park area is selected? And the second part is, will caterpillars in the trees make the Mckinsey Park location infeasible? So we'll turn it over to our Facilities Director, and then we'll have a brief presentation before questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Manny Hernandez, Maintenance Services Director for the City of Los Altos. So as the city manager just spoke to you about, I'll address those 2 things, but also, obviously, I'll be here for any questions that hopefully I can answer regarding maintenance throughout the night. So the first one is the Mckinsey. If Mckinsey is selected, there's been some concern with the health of the trees. Obviously, that concern stems from the dogs urinating in the area of the trees. Some of you may know, but let me just state that we did speak to an arborist several years ago when we talked about this location as an off-leash dog park area in the past. And we believed in our discussions with that arborist that there are measures that we can take to mitigate or eliminate those issues that the dog urine would bring to those established trees, mostly redwoods, but there are a couple other ones. So just a couple that we can identify that'll be inside the fencing. But there are steps that we could take to mitigate that issue. The other one are the caterpillar issues. I think everyone who's been a resident in Los Altos understands that in the end of the spring, usually there's a caterpillar issue throughout the city. We do have this in our parks. I don't know the science behind the caterpillars, but what we do know, what we can understand is some years it's worse than others. And that issue, though, as any other issue, first of all, we don't believe it's an infestation. It's something that happens every year, and like anything that becomes a concern within our parks, we are prepared to address it as needed should it need addressing when that time comes. Okay, I think that's all I have on those 2 issues, and once again, I'll be here to answer any questions. So at this point, I can hand this over to the Recreation Director to bring up the PowerPoint unless there's any questions on those 2 things. Okay, with that, Donna.
Thank you, Manny. Donna Legge, Recreation and Community Services Director. Hold on for a moment while I bring up the PowerPoint. Okay, as you know, we had looked at various parks on the north and the south part of the community, and we came up with 2 recommendations. In the north, we are looking at the soccer field east, which is closest to the parking lot and the community center. This measures approximately 6,300 square feet. And this is an area that is new in that we had reconfigured the parking lot when we constructed the community center. And so this is a new area that is available as a result of relocating the parking lot when the community center was built. The other recommendation in the south portion of the community is Mckinsey Park. This measures approximately 20,000 square feet and is shown being west of the existing tennis courts. And to the right of the tennis courts is our courtyard and the larger portion of Mckinsey Park. Alternative dog park locations as runner-ups would be in North Los Altos would be Rosita Park. This measures about 37,500 square feet and is located in the existing baseball field. In South Los Altos is Heritage Oaks Park. And as you can see, this is the undeveloped portion of Heritage Oaks Park that is located south of the existing park. It's very undeveloped. There's a creek side to the left, residents to the right. And that concludes the very short presentation and visual. So if at any point you would like me to pull those photos up, please let me know. That concludes our report.
Thank you very much, Director Legge. So we'll take questions of staff at this point, if anyone has questions of staff. I know there were a number of questions that came in, so maybe everything's been answered, but this is your chance. Councilmember Weinberg.
Thank you, Mayor. Director Legge, could you please put up the slide that has Heritage Oaks again, please?
Of course.
And Mayor, while she's pulling that up, 2 additional points. In the presentation, the square footage that was listed was intended to be the maximum size the dog park could be, not necessarily the recommended size. So when we went into design, if you look at Rosita, for example, it's a very large area. Ultimately, after design, the square footage may be easier. That's just or larger. That's just the maximum area that could fit. And when you look at like Heritage Oaks, the dog park wouldn't go over the creek. This is supposed to just be representative of the area.
Right. Thank you for that clarification.
Okay.
All right. So the city manager may have just addressed this, but at least one resident, maybe more, pointed out that on the map we're showing the dog park area actually going over the creek. And it's not just the creek, right? I mean, it's also the landscaping goes down heavily. I think it's clear that we're not anticipating making a part of the creek or the hillside going down as part of the fenced-in dog park. So in looking at this map, if the council wants to consider a dog park, a fenced-in dog park at Heritage Oaks, would we be thinking, would staff's plan be to just sort of cut off that corner in the southwestern part of that rectangle, or move the rectangle one way or another? And if we're not going to move the rectangle, how is that going to affect the square footage?
I think it's more like this in terms of the undeveloped area. I think once city council determines what their preferred park might be, we will come back with all the details worked out. These maps are just a general idea. It's not exact in any proportion or any way. And, you know, once we focus on specific parks, we will do our due diligence in taking everything into consideration.
Okay, thank you.
And Councilmember Weinberg, to follow up on that as well, what the other items we'll bring back are not only the design and the final square footage or the initial design, we also would have to bring back an ordinance change and other things for council. So once the location is selected, it will become much more specific on what we're asking council to approve.
Thank you.
Other questions? Councilmember Flagger.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for that presentation, Donna and Manny. Just a couple quick questions on the Hillview Soccer Field East site, the recommended site for North Los Altos. Was that site considered by the Park Subcommittee when they were looking at different options?
Which site were you asking about?
The Soccer Field East, the recommended, the #1 recommended North Los Altos site.
No, it was not. It was part of the recommendations when we were directed by council to find a fenced-in dog park.
Okay. And did we send written notices to the residents that are directly across from Soccer Field East? So the Hillview homes that are directly across, did we send them written notice about this proposed location?
No, we did not.
And then last question, and maybe this is the follow-up once we've identified the site, but for the pilot program on our baseball field, the Hillview baseball field, in addition to the fenced-in recommendation, some of the other concerns we heard had to do with upkeep, cleaning up the field. And so I'm curious whether or not staff has discussed how it would maintain the proposed sites, either the North and or South Los Altos sites, to ensure we don't have those issues with a future fenced-in dog park.
I'll defer that to Manny, but before I do that, one of the discussions and recommendations from the dog park subcommittee from the Parks and Recreation Commission was to do more noticing. An example, and also came from the animal control, and that was to have more signage and education for those taking their dogs from their car and actually having them off leash from the minute they exit the car all the way, that to really keep their dogs on leash and in voice command all the way until they get within the gate of the park. So that was well noted. That's just one example of some of the mitigation we can implement.
No, I appreciate that. And I remember Commissioner Morris making a statement, which we all understood, which is dogs don't read signs. And so we really need to make sure that the owners are taking that responsibility as well. Thank you.
Manny, did you have anything else to add regarding maintenance?
Yes, regarding the maintenance, to address that, Councilmember Flagger, is yes, it is something, since we've never had a dog park in Los Altos, but we do have some experience maintenance, including myself, who's familiar with maintaining a dog park. Our maintenance will change slightly as far as the park goes, so we'll work that through. The concerns about pickups and how it's kept and everything really was on that off leash, being that facility was a mixed use. I think it will take care of itself as far as being contained to just a dog park in that area. But there are some changes that we'll have to make to the maintenance program. But we're confident we can do it just as every other city does.
And briefly, Mayor, if I could, to follow up on the notification, I got a number of calls from Grant Park residents when this came out, and we talked through them, and I'd say, well, Grant Park's not a recommendation or an alternate. And they said, okay, I just wanted to make sure. And we had these conversations early on, and we decided not to do direct notification until a specific location was selected. And again, as we bring it back, we can do any type of notification that the council desires, including direct notification or flyers. we tried to do outreach in the area. So we did meet with specific neighbors to the Hillview site, and we met with the Dog Park Preservation Society on site, took a number of calls and met with the neighbors. But if council selects any of the 4 proposed sites and would like us to do more direct outreach as we bring this back, we're happy to.
Thank you.
I think that Councilmember Lee Eng, you were next.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you again to the staff for your presentation. Greatly appreciate it. So just to be clear, the $100,000 that is requested, that's for temporary fencing, correct? And so the temporary fence, will that just be placed over the space that you kind of like designated on the mapping? And then, so it'll just be including the grassy area that was there, and then until the design is done, if it ruins the grass, so be it, right? Is that what we are looking at for the 100,000 for now?
So I'll let our facilities director correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think the fencing is intended to be temporary. I think the 50,000 for each location would be for fencing, for shade structures, for seating, and any other kind of site-specific amenities that we may have to bring in or move or alter. But the point about the temporary nature is correct. We would bring back a permanent design as part of a future budget year. So we wouldn't intend to fence it and bring in shade and say that's the dog park. We would come back and say, okay, we fenced it, we've brought in shade, but now we need to decide on a design. Are we going to have specific play areas? Will we use some decomposed granite? Do we want to have other amenities that the dogs like? And that would be after the 50,000. The 50,000 for each site is to get it up and running, but we do anticipate, unless council makes a different direction, that the fencing at least would be permanent.
Okay, the question following that, that clarifies some things for me. Shouldn't the surfacing be decided before the implementation of the fencing? Because if you're going to make some design and you need to do the surfacing, shouldn't we roll that out first and then put the fencing around it? So are we doing things backwards, or so just trying to better understand our process and how we do things?
I think Councilmember Liang, I think you can do it either way. You could design the dog park entirely. The reason staff suggested doing it this way is it would get us a fenced in or 2 fenced in areas immediately that people could start using. And also would make engaging the people that use the dog park a little easier as to knowing what types of amenities they may find attractive in the dog park.
Okay. My other question is, so
Excuse me,
after.
Council member, I think Mr. Hernandez wanted to add something.
Oh,
before
sorry,
you ask
so
another
sorry.
question.
Exactly. Just to add, thank you, Mayor. But just to add to that, to help you with that, also the surfacing decision that we would finally make also depends on how many dog parks we have in the city too, because you may need it more resilient. We may not need it that resilient to spend that money. So I just wanted to add that just so you have a better understanding.
Okay. What is the true guesstimate, do you think, of the cost of a dog park? Because prior, when we as a council had allocated funds in CIP years prior for one dog park, the funds we allocated was 200,000. So I just want to make sure, are we looking at this with the right lens as to how much it's really going to cost us? And then also, after we get a good understanding of the cost, what do you suspect the annual maintenance costs will be, or how much more? I know you earlier said it wouldn't require much more maintenance, but I just like to understand these cost factors.
So the additional maintenance, I think Manny already addressed. We don't think it would create much additional maintenance cost at all. As far as the design costs go, that can range based on how grand of a dog park we're designing, and to Manny's point, how many we have. Right, If you're having one, you're likely going to want to have a surface that's tougher and more durable because it's going to get at least twice as much use. If you have two, you can split up the amenities. You can have one that's more natural. So again, I think the direction we received from council was to bring back locations that could be implemented immediately, which we've done. And then council can take their time to decide the elements and amenities they want in the dog park as part of the normal budget process.
Okay, one more question. If after tonight we decide on moving forward with a, dog park or dog parks, how long before it is actually installed and ready to use?
I could probably answer that one. We can estimate probably once we get the go and identify the funds, probably about 3 to 4 months.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Mayor.
And I'm going to ask a follow-up as a part of the answer to that, which is to remind us that we would need to implement a new ordinance. And so we'd have to get that done before we could actually operate the park. And I think 3 to 4 months, I'm going to look to the city manager and say, do you think we can get an ordinance through 2 readings in 3 to 4 months?
Yes, Mayor. I think if council's in agreement on the locations, that the ordinance changes would probably not be too hard to implement.
All right. Councilmember Lee Ing, was that the last of your questions?
Yes, thank you.
All right, Councilmember Vice Mayor Meadows.
Thank you, Mayor. So just one question, and I'm looking at the proposed, I guess, attachment 3, and I realize that the squares and rectangles and triangles are all hypothetical to some extent, but we're treating Rosita Park baseball and soccer field very different than we are the Hillview baseball field. Hillview's got a diamond, which we're delineating by a home run fence, and Rosita is this big rectangle, and I realize it can change shape and size, but that treatment of Rosita seems very different than the other baseball field. Would it make sense to have it be triangular like Hillview, or what is the rationale behind? Or again, is that just the max parameter as the city manager stated earlier?
So Vice Mayor, that's the max parameter that it could be. I think the likely outcome would be we would go to Rosita and we would see where can we fit this, that it doesn't encroach upon how we stripe our soccer fields, and then bring that back. There is the possibility of adding a fence, of course, out there and other amenities, but I think what you're seeing again is the max area, and ultimately that could be a long rectangle or a shorter square, but we were just trying to represent the maximum possibility.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have just one question, and that is for the Hillview site. What is the approximate longest side length of that rectangle?
It's 180 feet.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that because I know there were some questions about that size. So it's 180 feet. That's 60 yards, if I got my math right. Okay, so more than half of a football field. All right, if there are no more questions and if there's nothing else staff wants to add, we'll move to public comment. 2 people have already raised their hands. I'm going to give it a minute, see who else wants to speak about this. City Clerk, I think I see about 14 people, with the last one being Mr. Barron.
Yeah, it looks like I see 15.
15, okay. Then let's go 2 minutes each.
Okay, let me change that timer, please. Okay. All right, so our first speaker, I believe, is Mr. Bear. It's a call-in speaker, last four digits 9767. I believe that was John Bear. No?
Do you have me again?
Yes, that's you. Could you please state your name? I'm sorry.
Okay, well, you keep saying it's a phone call. It's not a phone call, it's a computer. So anyways, my name is Frank Martin. I live in Los Altos since 1976. So tell me how much time I have, what you want to do.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. We're ready for you to make your comment.
How much time do I have?
You have 2 minutes.
Okay. First off, I want to say that I'm happy that from reading the correspondence that the people that live near Hillview are happy with the solution at Hillview. From a personal point of view, I basically feel that the dog park idea is a Band-Aid. What most of the people that I know want is off leash in our parks, because none of the dog parks that you have cited are large enough for any of our dogs to get sufficient exercise. If you go online, you will find that the American Kennel Club wants essentially a minimum of a ½ acre for a small dog, an acre for a large dog. They both should be separated, and if combined, they need 2 acres or more. I don't see any solution that meets that requirement. As far as surface is concerned that you guys talked about, I did some checking, which apparently no one else did. And my friends at Rossmore, which is in Walnut Creek, put in a 6,100 square foot dog park. They started out with aggregate of the type that Gabe mentioned, and they had to tear it out because it was totally unusable for dogs or people. So they went to artificial grass. In 2014, the artificial grass cost $95,000 by itself, getting back to a question about cost. So you've grossly underestimated what it will cost. That park also has benches, water for people, water for dog, and natural trees for shading. It is a very nice little tiny park, mostly used by small dogs. And it also gets power washed and sanitized every single week. So when you talk about maintenance, that's the right way to do a dog park that I would never use in any event, because my dog needs much more room to run and so on. We worked for a long time to get off leash hours because we wanted to share parks. There's not enough space to put any dog park in any of our parks in Los Altos. So I'm really disappointed that you're basically going to claim victory, move on, and not satisfy the vast majority of people that need larger places for our dogs to play. I know a lot of people will be happy, but far more will be unhappy. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Our next speaker is T. Morris.
Good evening. This is Teresa Morris. I am a Park and Rec Commissioner, but I am very much not speaking as a Park and Rec Commissioner. This evening, I'm speaking as a resident. I'd like to point a couple of things out. There were dog park workshops that were done. If you go to the information, there is a summary. 152 residents do not support a fenced-in dog park. 112 residents support a fenced-in option. Most residents would prefer off-leash, not fenced-in. They've made it clear in those workshops. I think if we're going to move forward with an additional fenced-in location, that there should be more workshops done. Parks should do some more outreach for that. Heritage Oaks is a very poor choice for a location for a dog park. It is too close to a creek. It's too close to homes. The homes across the creek that you cannot see through the trees are definitely going to be impacted negatively, as are the homes that are there that you can see when you're standing in the park and that are very close to the park. The criteria for the parks plan is not actually met when you look at that park. We are stewards of that creek. We need to be taking care of that creek, and having dogs running down on it won't be a good thing. If you look at the letters that came in, I haven't had a chance to total all of them, but we have a strong yes for Hillview. We have a very strong no for Heritage Oaks. We have a for Mckinsey. I also would like to point out that there is an obligation of council members to represent the best interests of the city and community in large. There is an obligation by the council members to listen to the community and hear what they have to say. By bypassing their input, and choosing to move ahead with a fenced-in location is wrong. The Hillview one had a pilot program. Let's do a pilot program somewhere else. Hillview makes sense. It's more of a dog run than a dog park, so it meets the needs better. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morris.
I have a speaker by the name of Betty, B-E-T-T-E, and I am unable to allow her to speak. She needs to download a newer version of Ring Central.
Okay.
So while she tries to do that, the next speaker would be Steve Hutchins. I'm having the same issue with him. So next speaker I have is Diane.
Hello, are you able to hear me?
Hi, can you hear me?
Oh, okay, well.
Diane, go ahead, Mr. Houchins. We're going to come back to you in a moment.
Hello, this is Diane. I've been in Los Altos for about 27 years. I've had dogs my entire life. I absolutely commend you for putting in dog parks because it's something we absolutely need. We have already been going to parks and I hear a lot about all your plans. And I think, to me, if you go out and listen and observe to the people who are out there, I've gone to Hillview, I've gone to Rosita, I've gone to Mckinsey. We are a community out there. We meet out there. We're already out there meeting, whether it's a dog park or not, and it's a community. So I think if you go out and just talk to those people and listen to them, you can get an idea of what they think they need. But I think those locations are perfect. And it's not only important to have the off leash for the dogs. I mean, I have a puppy from July and they need to have socialization and it's been wonderful. But I think at the same time, what's really nice is we have a community. I meet a lot of people and it's very nice. We have the Hillview group that we kind of set together for this. My dog's Jax, a lot of you guys know him. I just think we need to kind of spend a little time to go out and see what people are doing, where they're meeting and what they need, and really to establish what it is going forward. So I can't speak a lot to rules and regulations, but I could speak a lot to people and hearts and where they've been today. That's my plea.
Thank you very much. Let's take Mr. Houchins. I think he managed to find his way on.
Hi, are we on?
Yes, you are.
This is Steve Houchins. I cede my 2 minutes to Bet Houchins, and she's here also.
Yeah, so for some reason, this is Bet Houchins. I don't know why.
Let them give you time.
Oh.
Okay, so you are ceding your time to Bet Houchins?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so I will change that. Okay.
Okay.
You can go ahead and start.
Thank you, City Council and staff, for the possibility of a permanent off-leash dog park. Steve and I support the staff's recommendation on the Hillview Soccer Field East very strongly, and I'm going to let the rest of my time to the rest of the people. Thank you.
I'm sorry, but you cannot then in turn cede time to other people. So if there's something more you want to say, you should go ahead and say it.
Not at this time. I will write it in. I'm more of a writer than a public speaker.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, so our next speaker is Barbara Addy.
Thank you. My name is Barbara Addy. I've been in Los Altos since 2007. I want to speak in strong opposition to Mckinsey Park West and Mckinsey Park as a whole, as a location. As I mentioned in my letter, the Los Altos Parks and Rec Subcommittee report in May 2020 specifically ruled out this location for a number of reasons. I'd like to focus on three. One is that I believe parks are for all Los Altans. And as some of the other speakers have said, we can share the space rather than ruining a park with a fenced-in dog park. This specific location is currently used for a children's play structure and by patients, families, and staff from the Los Altos subacute care facility. So it's not clear to me how a dog park is more important than children and wheelchair-bound residents. From an environmental perspective, I object to the characterization by staff that urine and feces are not a problem. In fact, it's the excess water used to flush out the park that will also be of significant damage to heritage oaks and redwood trees. In terms of traffic, that parking lot at the maintenance yard is always full. So I'm picturing a lot of parking, parallel parking on Fremont in that bike lane that we just got finished building. So this will be a safety impact to the community. Lastly, I'm very concerned about the cavalier description of the construction, that we will very quickly throw up some fences and then maybe go back and maybe not use the grassed area after all, and maybe have a different surface. We're not sure what. It just feels like this is all being done in a big rush. So again, I strongly object, particularly to the Mckinsey Park location. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Derek Pitcher.
Hello, thank you for listening and taking my call. Derek Pitcher, I live on Clinton Road, and I'm a daily user of Mckinsey Park with my dog, who's enjoyed it there for quite a long time. I think what we really do need is off-leash in all parks. We don't need fenced-in parks at all. So Frank is right. There's communities that are built around these things, but you don't need to fence in a community. You also don't need to take existing well-used parkland and fence it in just for dogs. That is a major problem here. We don't have enough just open areas to enjoy. And that's what is being proposed at Mckinsey. You're removing play structures, you're removing areas that residents sit and enjoy things. Also, you haven't considered the impact of the tennis courts. I mean, I can imagine you may have unintended consequences here if you put the dog park there and you're trying to do tennis lessons. So you're going to have shouting and things, and maybe the lessons won't happen there. And with Mckinsey East, if you put it where it's proposed, is right next to residents, and you also have Kids Love Soccer there in the summers. And so that doesn't seem to mix. So why not open the parks up for everywhere? If Hillview is a reasonable point and people want it there, we can make one dog park there, maybe fenced in, but I really don't think we necessarily need that. Make it a off-leash, trial that, come back and see where we are. There's been 10 years or more, and we're still here, but we have not demonstrated the need for a fenced-in park at all. And so I would really want us to go back and look at that and do the right pilots with off-leash in all parks and come back and revisit this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pitcher.
Our next speaker is Millie Squire, followed by Mia. Millie? Millie Squire? Okay. Well, let's see if Mia is ready. Mia? Mia?
Good evening. My name is Mia. Thank you for taking the time to speak about this. And I like to talk. I would like to thank the council members and the staff for all the hard work you put into this to make this program happen in Los Altos. And I am strongly supporting the Los Altos off-leash program at Hillview. And I think it would make a huge difference to our city to allow the dogs to be off leash. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mia.
Our next speaker is Lisa D. Lisa?
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you. Madam Mayor and council members, first off, we just want to thank you for your time tonight. I'm Lisa Deegan, and I'm representing over 343 members of the Hillview Dog Park Preservation Society. We really don't want to take more time than necessary. You've given us so much time in December, and your staff listened to all the complaints and followed up on the responsibility of addressing all these key issues that accompany a dog park, such as noise, cleanup, safety, maintenance, etc. So council, we appreciated that you directed staff to find viable alternatives for a permanent park in Los Altos, and we appreciate that staff tackled this to provide our community with off-leash park options. So thanks for doing a great job and identifying an area at Hillview, which we feel addresses the concerns of safety, noise, proximity to houses, ease of parking, and with more signs containing rules would definitely be beneficial. This has been a 20-year need in our community, and tonight we're so optimistic and thankful that things are moving forward thanks to your staff and the hard work on our community that everybody's put into this. So going forward, we want to help with final design to ensure safety and a clear, solid plan. So we're volunteering to work with staff on the design and implementation phase. We want to continue working with them to make sure it's safe and well maintained. We know our neighboring community towns like Mountain View, Cupertino, Sunnyvale, they've worked this out. And we can bring this expertise of details to make it successful in our town and community. So we're eager to collaborate with staff in the design and implementation of a permanent off-leash area, as well as ongoing communications between city and off-leash community. I appreciate your time and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Lisa.
Our next speaker is David Stiff.
Yes, thank you very much for all the effort City Council and staff have put into the dog park. We had a very successful pilot program, and it looks like a lot of the issues we ran into, as Lisa said, were well considered with the design of the park. So I would like to see the implementation move forward, especially at Hillview, in a timely manner. I know there's been some discussions about further design and thought, which we do need to do, but I would like to see it done quickly. So, we don't have to wait, more years to see an official dog park stood up in Hillview. So thank you for all the efforts that you've done, staff, and looking forward to Hillview.
Thank you, Mr. Stiff.
Our next speaker is Larry Barron.
All right.
Hi, I was going to cede my time to Lisa Deegan, but that opportunity came and went. I will say something to the people who want off leash at the parks. It's a nice concept, but what the trial at Hillview showed is if you have any amount of off leash, you're liable to have some incidents, which they did have. So one of the things that came out of the Hillview trial was you need a fence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barron.
Okay, our next speaker is a phone-in speaker, last four digits, 9493.
Hello, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Hi, my name is Dean Khan. I'm a Los Altos resident. I was going to also cede my minutes to Lisa, but missed the boat on that. So I will just briefly say thank you to the mayor and to City Council for holding this. And I strongly support the off-leash program at Hillview. Our town really needs a dedicated off-leash space in which our dogs are free to run, play, and socialize with each other. Please help us make off leash at Hillview a permanent reality for our pets. My kids second that, and they're all doing homework right now. Thank you for your consideration and attention to this matter. We really appreciate it. We hope this becomes a reality. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Janine Valadez.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, thanks for the opportunity to speak. I'm a park commissioner speaking as a private resident. We must stop looking at the past for understanding the role that dogs currently play in the lives of Los Altos residents. The number of dogs here has exploded over the last 2 years and even the last 18 months, not only by head count, but by share of the housing that we have in the city, making all findings in the past, even the recent past, essentially null and void. 2 parks are a great start, and I like the 2 selected by staff, but this doesn't solve the problem. We need more parks within walking and biking distance of more neighborhoods. By doing this, we will ameliorate issues of in-park congestion, noise, parking, wear and tear, and downtime for refurbishments. Residents that believe dogs are not a major demographic in the city are uninformed or unaware or in denial. We have dog poop in all the parks and in many waterways and on trees as people allow their dogs to roam off leash in an unlawful manner. I sat at Heritage Oak Parks and just watched, and there were many off-leash dogs, and the dogs, quite frankly, loved the undeveloped areas more than the grassy areas. Their owners didn't seem to care that their dogs were peeing on the trees and were going down to the creek, etc. It is the protection of fearful people, waterways, and trees, and the safety of dogs that make unfenced off-leash in all park an absolute no-go and a liability issue for the city. Having only 2 sites does not solve the problem. I strongly favor having the 2 recommended plus 3 temporary fenced-in sites at Rosita, Lincoln in the area south of the Chamber, and Heritage Oaks, with more to follow thereafter. I want to urge dog park advocates to do some research and understand that they don't have to be large. The AKC recommendation does not apply to urban and tight suburban applications. Behaviorists have shown that small dog parks are great for socialization and training. Please, please move forward with multiple parks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Valdez.
Our next speaker is Bill Shepard.
Hello, Council. South Los Altos residents deserve a dog park. Mckinsey Park is a fine option. The proposed area is currently utterly underused. The uses which people claim will be lost can be met by Mckinsey Park East. Some comments suggest Los Altons don't want dog parks. The unqualified success of the Hillview pilot and ongoing clamor for dog parks for many years suggests otherwise. I'm confident that many more residents will make use of a dog park than other proposed uses such as pickleball and bocce. Some have claimed off-leash dog parks are dangerous for dogs and their owners. Evidence from thousands of beloved dog parks nationwide belies this myth. Some have suggested a park will be too popular. We should reject a proposal because it will be too popular? What a curious rationale. Popularity should be celebrated. Any negative side effects can be handled through follow-up policies as needed. Cuesta Park is not a good alternative. Its off-leash area is riddled with gopher holes. It's unsafe for dogs and humans. Some commenters state that a yes vote will disregard citizen input. So will a no vote. Such is life for an elected official. Waiting to see how well a fenced-in park at Hillview works has little relevance to a park at Mckinsey. Enough paralysis by analysis. It's time for action. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shepard.
Our next speaker is Alan Ammett. Alan?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Alan.
Thanks everyone for giving me also time to speak. And I want to thank the council members, the committee members, and all the people who have done so much hard work over the past year and more to examine options and find the solution. I want to just lead with a plea to do something after all this hard work. There are thousands of people, and a previous speaker underscored just how many more families with dogs we have now in Los Altos. The demand for a solution is enormous. And as someone said earlier, we have an obligation to listen to Los Altons. And many of us have dogs. Many of us are really, really eager to see a solution anywhere. So I really appreciate the two options and the two alternate options that were presented this evening. I think they can work very, very well. I'm sure there are some shortcomings and some advantages, and we can continue to explore and refine, but please, please have one at least or two options available to all of us dog owners in Los Altos. We are eager to be responsible members of the community. Many of us have discussed how we can help and how we can support those efforts. We are committed. I speak for the entire community that I know very well from the park, the experiment at Hillview. We are all committed to being responsible, following the regulations, following the ordinances, watching our pets, and being very responsible members of the community. So thank you again for all the hard work. We are optimistically looking forward to an established play area for our pets in the near future. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Alon.
Our next speaker has initials RLKW.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. My name is Linda White, and I live on Clinton Road, and I've lived in Los Altos for 43 years. And I use Mckinsey Park almost every day. I walk through there quite frequently. I think there's a misperception that Mckinsey Park is not used, and that really is not the truth. I use that park. Staff from surrounding offices, the medical offices and such, they use Mckinsey Park to eat lunch in. Frequently, I see bicyclists come and gather at Mckinsey Park and socialize and have picnics. Families who are playing tennis will frequently either rest in Mckinsey Park, or their children will play and eat or do homework at Mckinsey Park. And I'd like to try to understand why Mckinsey Park is being cited as a good park to replace with a fenced-in dog park. Seems to me that the other choices, Hillview, Heritage Oaks, and Rosita, do not have the assets that are already established that Mckinsey Park does. So by putting a fence around Mckinsey Park, you are going to be losing significant monetary assets that have already been established and spent on developing that beautiful park. So to fence it in, you are basically throwing away that money and throwing away those assets. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The next speaker is a phone-in speaker, last four digits, 7594.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. This is Millie Squire, and I'm sorry, I could not unmute on the webinar, so I called in. I just wanted to speak about Heritage Oaks now being listed as an alternative for Mackenzie West. Over the years, it has been found that there are no perfect places to put dog parks in Los Altos. I hope that the council members have had the chance to read the letters that have been sent in from the neighbors of the Heritage Oaks. Most of these people live directly across the park, as I do. And we have dealt with off-leash dogs barking every day for years. I really would like the council to understand how close that park is to the neighbors' homes. As seen with the Hillview pilot program, there's not just 3 or 4 dogs at one time that could be there. There's up to 20. That amount of dogs barking is loud. There is no way to escape that noise. The Hillview pilot was enjoyed by many, but it seems that the only solution to the problems that came up was to make fenced dog parks.
But the noise, the dogs and the people who got bit, the lack of any monitoring or enforcement of the rules will still be problems, except that the dogs will be fenced in. And hopefully those dogs will stay at the fenced in park rather than going over and spilling over into the other part of Heritage Oaks. Not to mention that the parking is totally inadequate and traffic will be increased tremendously. I'm asking the council to please consider the residents who live only 50 feet away from the proposed dog park and not vote in favor of Heritage Oaks having a fenced-in dog park. I thank you.
Thank you for your persistence in calling in.
The last speaker I have is Jim Sweeney.
Yes, I'd like to support the Hillview Dog Park. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I think the trial worked very well. We found some problems that can be fixed. The staff, and I went to the meeting that the city manager held, and he had a really good argument for fencing in that little area that was added on the edge of the parking lot where there used to be parking at Hillview. That sounds like an ideal place to immediately build a park and not wait. There doesn't seem to be much opposition to that park at all. That could be a start the council could get done tonight, and there'd be a place for people to go in the interim while other areas are being considered. There seems to be no opposition to the Hillview site. It's not taking away from the soccer field. It's not taking away from parking. It's got a bathroom, it's got water, all the positive things that the city manager pointed out to us when we met with him. I think I would appreciate if the city council votes tonight to at least get that one done in a quick manner. And then if there are other issues on the other ones, that can be dealt with when you can. Also, I would advocate no time frame on that park because that would spread out the use. When it was restricted before and the time was not appropriate, it was either too early when it's wet in the morning or too late when it's dark and the mosquitoes are out in the evening. So having an open time during the day would allow more people to use it and spread out the use so it's not as crowded at one particular time. I appreciate if the city council would go ahead and follow through on this tonight and not put it off for another 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney.
Madam Mayor, I have no other members of the public wishing to speak.
Okay, I'm going to bring it back to council for discussion. And just to restate what our city manager said at the beginning and to clarify, we really are looking at potentially two motions here tonight. One would be to determine if we want to move forward with one or two locations. And then a separate motion that would direct staff to bring back the requisite changes to the ordinance and the specific approval of the budget allocation. So we can cover both of those in our conversations, but ultimately that's what we're potentially headed toward. And that would be within the definition of what we have agendized tonight. So who wants to start us off? Going once. Thank you, Vice Mayor. Go ahead. You beat Councilmember Flagger by a whisker.
I'm happy to yield to Councilmember Flagger. Oh no, she says, take it away. Okay. So yeah, I'm struggling where I start with what I want to say. So I'm going to use the nomenclature tonight of dog park because let's not mix it up with the off-leash pilot that we did at Hillview baseball field before. So I'm going to talk about dog park because we're talking about a fenced-in area, which probably will have off-leash dogs in it, but it is a fenced-in dog park. So I'm just clarifying that because I've heard all sorts of different ways of referring to it. So we're talking about where might we possibly fence things in. Then I want to put some things on an apples to apples basis, or pick your fruit, oranges to oranges if you prefer. And so first of all, Ashley, let me back up. Thank the staff, thank the Parks and Rec Commission, because this is a lot of work that's gone in over time. And me being probably the only council member who hadn't seen the dog park thing before, now I know why it's taken 10 years, right? So, but let me talk about some of the work that the Parks and Rec Commission did. The Parks and Rec Commission did have workshops. The findings from those workshops are not exactly relevant to what we're looking at now, because we have done a pilot that came out of the findings of the workshop, and now we have the findings from that pilot to bring back in. So we had one of the commissioners quote the numbers of people who didn't favor dog parks, fenced in dog parks. I was one of the votes at one of those workshops that I didn't favor fenced in dog parks. But now that I've seen the results of our off-leash pilot, I realize the best thing for our community is actually to fence the dogs, because otherwise we put some of our children at risk, or our seniors at risk, or all the things that we found in the pilot of off-leash hours. So we cannot say that those workshop results are extrapolatable today. We still have learnings from them, but what we have learned more recently is important. So despite wanting to say, yeah, let's all have a free-for-all with our dogs, which is kind of what happens, but at least it's in a lesser scale because it's not legal. So what we're looking at tonight is considering some possible sites for fenced-in areas. I do think it's a valid point to say we haven't actually piloted a fenced-in area. And so we're calling these permanent dog parks, and it sounds like a significant investment, but maybe we actually do need to look at it a year from now if we choose one or more sites and say, what have we learned? Is this worth it? Is this, is this what we want to do moving forward? Because we could get learnings from that either. So let me go on to say that in my mind, I think there are 3 sites that I saw rise to the top. I think the Hillview soccer field site and the Mckinsey West, as staff recommended, as the top choices, but I also see Rosita as potentially in there. In my personal opinion, Rosita might be better than Hillview soccer. There's pros and cons to each. The strongest pro for Mckinsey West is that it's really not impacting homes. I've heard some speakers talk about people who do use that quiet and beautiful space. But if we were to fence that in and take proper care of those grounds to make sure we're not, damaging our trees or whatever, we're at least not impacting homes with the noise. Let's talk about Hillview soccer field, which seems to be the favorite of a lot of people who participated in the Hillview pilot program. I will say that, again, we got a lot of learnings from that pilot. The Hillview soccer field east is a very different setup. It is essentially, in my mind, a dog run. It is 35 foot wide. And then depending on where you maximize or minimize or wherever you put that length, it's between 100 foot and 100, what did I hear? 180, but that takes you right up near the theater. I have some concerns about the choice of this site because it was never on the commission's list. I've talked to people who weren't aware that this was coming to council as a proposal. These people who live here live next to a very programmed site. The soccer parking along Hillview is continuous during that season, and it's very intense. The other thing I would say about that is this street just lived through a year and a half or more of community center construction. They've borne the burden for our community to have this beautiful new center now that we can take advantage of. And so to say, so we do have people supporting this because the Hillview pilot people know that this is really close and maybe they can use it. But the residents, the houses that we're saying there's no complaints, but they're not aware of this proposal for the most part. So I am not willing to say that everyone supports Hillview Soccer East, because we haven't given them the chance to weigh in on that. I do think also, if we have 343 or more members of our Preservation Society, I can't imagine them using a field that size, a park, fenced-in park that size, 35 foot wide by 100 to 180 or wherever you draw the line. So that seems to me, I mean, I went out there with my iPhone and I was measuring things, and yes, I was that geek with the phone. And it's a really small space. There's soccer there, there's community concerts in the summer. Did we really want the dog park there? So obviously, it's not all positive for that site. Then if you look at Rosita, and I went back to familiarize myself. My son played baseball there for many years, but I hadn't been in a long time. There's a lot of space there, but it also has multiple uses, and I don't know if staff has had enough time to really explore the uses there and what the fit would be there. But there are some houses, but it's no more houses than are affected at Hillview. So in my mind, if we as a council can select a site to try, those are the three that rise to the top of my mind. None of them are perfect, but I myself don't feel that nobody objects to Hillview, because those who would object haven't been given a say in it. So I will end my little diatribe there and let one of my colleagues take over.
And I think the next person up will be Councilmember Flagger.
Thank you, Mayor. And as usual, Vice Mayor Meadows has said a lot of what I had on my list. And just to echo what she said about the Hillview soccer field east, I agree with her. I wouldn't make the statement that everybody is supportive of that location. I also view it very much as a dog run, as opposed to what I envision as a fenced-in dog park. But this is where Vice Mayor Meadows and I may part ways. So let me first start off by thanking our city manager, our director, staff, all the residents who really got involved, the park commissioners who did a lot of the heavy lifting, as we know, which we were able to build on to bring us to today. So I'll be quick. I am inclined to support the soccer field east location. I do think that location, because of parking, even though it was on the baseball field, that area in general has been somewhat vetted. I was concerned when I went back and looked at the Park Commission subcommittee's reports that that site wasn't adequately vetted or even considered by that subcommittee, because I thought the subcommittee did such a thorough job. I would have welcomed reading their feedback on whether or not they would have recommended that site. But having said that, and I won't repeat a lot of what Vice Mayor Meadows said, because she has raised a lot of my concerns about that site. But of all the proposed North Los Altos sites, I do think that for me is the best location. A couple things. One, I know we're not at the design phase, but I am concerned because that dog run or fenced-in dog park is alongside the soccer field, which normally has 3 or 4 different teams going at the same time, that if we move forward as a council with this location, that the entrance to that dog run or fenced-in dog park should definitely face the soccer field. Should face the parking lot, because I am concerned when owners or dog walkers go into that area, they may leave the gate open. And of course, dogs don't read signs. I love saying that. The owners may not close that gate, and they're going to see this wild, wide, big field for them to run out to. And so if we decide to move forward at that location and considering the design, I would definitely recommend that we have the entrance to the park face the parking lot. I do want to follow up on notifying the residents across from that location and also the other users of the Hillview space that could be impacted by having this dog park there. So I am supportive of all the locations proposed by staff. This is my preferred choice, but I do think we need to do some follow-up work to ensure that if the neighbors across the street have any concerns or things that we can incorporate in any final plans for that location, that we do so. With regards to the South Los Altos proposed sites, I am not prepared tonight to support any of the South Los Altos sites as a permanent location. I was very intrigued by one or two public speakers suggesting that we do a pilot in South Los Altos in some form before we make it a permanent dog park, fenced in off-leash hours area. And I welcome that suggestion. And one question I will ask Mr. England or staff is, we're estimating right now $100,000 for at least 2 sites. And so if we were to invest in some form of a pilot program, for example, at Mckinsey, how easy is it for us to then decide after a year, this isn't working? To the extent we could do the least work required just to do the pilot, that's what I would prefer before we, spend X amount to do a permanent full-blown solution in South Los Altos. So Mr. England, I see you have your video on. If you could just address that, please.
Yes, I think at other locations we could do a pilot for a year. We would expect to expend the full $50,000 getting the site ready still, because we were essentially doing minimal necessary work to begin with. But if council wanted to look at a trial at Mckinsey or Hillview or the other locations, I don't think it would be a problem to put a time frame on that. I don't want to put a specific end time at this point, which makes the most sense. We can come back with a recommendation as staff. It might be 6 months or a year, but I think a trial certainly would be feasible.
Thank you, Mr. England. And I just want to be clear, I am definitely inclined tonight to support the permanent location at Hillview soccer field with all the other issues I raised being addressed. But it's the South Los Altos location, starting with Mckinsey, I would be more supportive of doing a trial there. And also looking back at the subcommittee's report and trying to reconcile some of the issues they raised regarding Mckinsey Park and staff's recommendation. And I know, the subcommittee was looking more at off-leash hours and we were more focused on fenced dog parks. But I do think when you look at their concerns raised and some of the residents tonight about Mckinsey Park as part of that pilot, I'd want us to consider those. So I'll stop there, Mayor. That's where I'm inclined right now. And I look forward to hearing from our colleagues.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Weinberg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I want to say thank you to my colleagues, Vice Mayor Meadows and Councilmember Flygor. Vice Mayor, I think you did an excellent job really laying out the situation as we see it today, because there has been, I think there will continue to be a lot of historical analysis. And I think that I was thinking this, but you really articulated it very well. Circumstances have changed so much that what we have learned in the past is not necessarily applicable to what the future of dog ownership in Los Altos is going to be. And that is not to minimize what we have learned. That is not to minimize the findings and the efforts that Park went through to gather information, because I think it is and has been useful. And so it directly ended up leading to the pilot program at the baseball field. But I think that we are moving forward. And Madam Vice Mayor, as you said, you originally opposed fenced in, and having now seen the results of off leash, you're changing your perspective. I find myself more in alignment with Councilmember Flygor when it comes to the Hillview proposal, the soccer field. I think that the concerns about the immediate neighbors is of course valid. We do need to let them know specifically that this is in our sights and get their input as well, make sure that they can have their voices heard because we need to hear them. I'm not quite as concerned about the size of the dog run though, as my colleagues. And specifically, the reason for that is we've heard overwhelming support from the dog ownership community in this neighborhood. And I understand that my colleagues have gone out there, they've looked at it, but I have to believe that so have members of the Dog Preservation Society and other advocates. I don't believe that the size or the location is necessarily ideal in their minds, but I believe that the members of the Preservation Society believe that this will work. And that's why they're supporting it. And that means a lot to me. A couple of members of the community really hit on what I think is an important point. And that is that the amenities that we have for dog owners, whether it's a fenced-in dog park or off-leash hours, is really not about the dogs. It's about the people, it's about the community. And I'm hearing from a community that really seems to have formed during COVID that they want this because it's going to help them continue to thrive. It's not just about the dogs having exercise, it's about people meeting each other and becoming friends and going to people's birth celebration, celebration of newborns and weddings. I mean, that was really, really moving to me. And I think that we have an obligation when we have an opportunity like this to try to foster that. So I am comfortable moving forward with the recommendation to adopt the Hillview site as recommended by staff, pending, of course, final input from the immediate residents. I also favor having a permanent dog park location in the south of the city. And ideally, I would love to see it further south than the Mckinsey site, but I'm only going to look at the Mckinsey site right now. There is a very real perception in the southern part of the city that it gets the short end of the shaft. And there are members of the southern part of the city who are going to say, oh, sure, the northern part of the city gets a permanent dog park, but we end up just getting some kind of a trial run. And I don't think that that is necessarily a fair characterization of what has been proposed, but I think that that is how it is going to be perceived. And based upon what the city manager has said to us tonight, I'm not sure there's a lot to be gained by saying, well, the one at Hillview is permanent and the one at Mckinsey is just kind of a trial run. I think we really need to treat them both as permanent, or both as trial. My preference would be to treat them as permanent. Look, if it doesn't work, we can always get rid of it. We can always come back and revisit it. My preference would be to not put a time limit on it. If there are problems, the problems will become evident, and those problems will be brought to the council and we can address it. But if these programs are working well, I don't think that it's really serving the community or the council to insist that it come back to us. We've already heard from staff that the $100,000 is not for what will end up being the final permanent dog park, if that's what the city ends up with. It's what it's going to take to get a basic dog park structure put together with appropriate amenities, both for dog owners and for the dogs themselves, pending a future investment in a more, for lack of a better word, elaborate or sophisticated system. So that's sort of my long-winded way of saying I support the staff recommendation to move forward with the Mckinsey Park West location and the Hillview location, again, pending further input from the immediate communities that are going to be impacted. Oh, there is one last thing I want to say about Mckinsey. The beautiful thing that I find with Mckinsey is that if we end up turning that triangle into a fenced-in dog park, I think we are still leaving the core of that park intact. The tennis courts are still there. The rest of the park is around a narrow walkway. You have the restrooms, and then you have the open grassy area. It gets muddy in the winter time when it's rainy, but it's a nice, beautiful area with picnic tables around it. And I think there's 2 play structures there. The dog park on the other side of the tennis courts, I think is going to minimally impact that part of the park. And I hope that we're making clear to the public that when the council is talking about Mckinsey, we are talking about that triangle bounded by Altos Oaks, Fremont, and the tennis courts, and not the center of the park, which I think it's Clinton Road that ends at that part of the park. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Weinberg. Councilmember Liang.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank staff for the 2 sites that they have identified. And I appreciate the comments that my fellow council members and Vice Mayor had made earlier. They made valid points and some good points. Some points I would like to raise or highlight is that the recommended sites, the one thing good about the 2 recommended sites is that they're near emergency services. When they're near emergency service sites, people tend to behave better. I think that also in case of emergency, people are able to respond faster. So I have been to dog parks where people needed assistance, and knowing that they're both near emergency services is a plus. I like what the Vice Mayor said, that Mckinsey was not near residences, and it's near Foothill Expressway. So I think Foothill Expressway will also help to mitigate some of the noise concerns with the barking dogs. I also believe that when we did the program at Hillview, we learned a lot. So I don't think it's necessary for us to rush into implementing 2 sites at one time. I wouldn't mind definitely moving forward on Hillview first and learning from that, and then rolling out any other sites at the implementation of Mckinsey after. Because if there are things that we can learn and correct, I think we should do so. The one thing I would like to question or talk about is where the Hillview site is located. We have it so close to the parking lot, so close to the community center. When it's put there without any buffers or sound walls, it tends to create more noise. I don't know if we should look at putting it closer to the other side of the soccer field where there's fencing, and then it backs up to all the parking spaces of those commercial spaces off of San Antonio. It could buffer some of the noise instead of having all the noise go out there. So it would also keep the Hillview soccer field looking like one big open space if we need that. So I would hope that if we keep it at Hillview, maybe we should consider doing that. And if it helps to have a visual, I could perhaps, Ms. Legge, if you could help me put that picture up and I could point that out, that would be helpful. So if you could put up Hillview. So
hold on. I'm going to redo it.
Thank you.
All right.
I think you understand. So moving it on the opposite side towards the left-hand side of the thank you of that side of the wall or that side of Hillview may be helpful in making our field look more expansive. It would also have a sound wall because of the fencing around there. So I think it might help mitigate some of the noise factor. The gate opening can be towards the small parking lot. And also the length could be longer. So if you look at it, it's kind of cut off, so it can be longer. So, but I definitely feel we should move forward on Hillview first. So just food for thought, and that's my points. Let's see. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have two questions for staff before I comment. For Ms. Legge and Mr. Hernandez, did you look at the Hillview area that Councilmember Lee Eng was just talking about?
Yes and no, but we didn't formalize it.
Mayor, we didn't look at that specific configuration. We looked, one of the sites we looked at was adjacent to Friends of the Library in the parking lot area, and with the trees that we currently have the fence around. We determined that specific site would be difficult due to the current lease with Friends of the Library and the parking lot. However, if council wants us to consider other configurations on Hillview, if that's the selected location, we can certainly bring that back along with the ordinance change, if that's something council wants. The specific way that Councilmember Lee Eng is drawing that out, we did not look at. We looked at I think a more square, more compact shape.
Okay, thank you. And then my other question, which is for you, Mr. City Manager, in the conversations that you had, and you said you had conversations with neighbors, I gather that was rather more informal, but there was some outreach. Did you have conversation with any of the people who live across Hillview?
So I'm actually, Mayor, not entirely sure where the residences were. So I don't know if they were the neighbors specifically across it would be impacted. Again, if council selects this site, we're happy to do formal notification to any residences that may be impacted, set up pre-meetings with them to walk them through whatever the location is. So it was exactly as you described it. It was informal, and it was not intended to present a finalized plan, but really show kind of our thought process and how we came up with the recommendations.
Okay. So I'll say that thank you to the staff. I want to thank the park commissioners. I was liaison to Parks Commission during one of the years where they were working on this issue. I believe that Councilmember Weinberg served on the Parks Commission, at least during one of the years or more than one of the years that this was involved, and perhaps even former Mayor Flagger was, and I think Councilmember Lee Eng. So there's a lot of expertise on this council on this issue as well. I do want to thank Vice Mayor Meadows for raising the issue that, things have changed. We don't necessarily get driven by all the work that was done before, but we're certainly informed by all the work that was done before and by the results of the pilot that we had. I find myself most closely aligned with what was articulated by Councilmember Weinberg, that Hillview, I'm prepared to support a park at Hillview. I think that we would be well served and well serving the community that has been very vocal and said, this works for us. And we have space there. I'm not sure the right way to approach the possible alternative location. I can foresee some merit to considering that opposite end. of the Hillview field to do this, but I'm supportive of moving forward on Hillview. And I'm also supportive of moving forward on Mckinsey. And I think that Councilmember Weinberg said it well, and that is we need to treat Mckinsey as permanent. And if it doesn't work, then we deal with it. We are essentially two-phasing this as it is. If we take staff's approach where we, eventually obligate $100,000 to do permanent fencing, I know it was very clear from the research that the commission did that temporary fencing simply doesn't work. So we would be doing permanent fencing anyway and holding off potentially doing kind of a full build out for some period of time until we see how it goes. So if we've kind of more than maybe stuck our foot in the water with Mckinsey, if we go forward tonight, and then if we find out that we need to do something a little differently, we haven't jumped in head first. And so I would support that. Councilmember Flagler has raised her hand. So just a moment before I go to you, I think that the points about Mckinsey, we've really got two parks. They're connected, but there really are two parks, and we're not touching this one huge area. So I think Mckinsey is a really good solution. And I think that we have to consider that we have a community that has, in some cases, conflicting interests. And it's incumbent on us to find the way through to do what we think is right. And so I'm looking to whoever wants to take a cut at a kind of a consensus view here. Perhaps that's what Councilmember Flagler is willing to do. I'll try her first for her comments and then take what Councilman Weinberg has to say. So go ahead.
So I'll just do some follow-up comments. I'm not ready to pull it all together. So on the location that Councilmember Lee Eng proposed, I am definitely more supportive of the soccer field east that staff had identified. I actually appreciate the fact that dog owners or dog walkers can immediately get to that location from the parking lot, as opposed to running through or walking through the soccer field. Even if you have the entrance over where the Friends of the Library location is, you will have people just walking over the soccer field with the dogs to get to the dog park. And so my preference is to keep it in the location that staff recommended. I think where the Friends of the Library is temporarily located right now would have also been a great area to consider, but that's not on the table. So between the area proposed by Councilmember Lee Eng and what staff proposed, I'm definitely more supportive of having that location. Mayor, what I was going to ask is if a colleague is planning to make a motion regarding the different recommendations, I would ask that we do two different motions, one for North Los Altos and one for South Los Altos, because I am still sitting here not yet ready to support moving forward with the location at Mckinsey. And just to echo some of the things that Councilmember Lee Eng said, which I agree with, my preference is just to vet what happens at Hillview, learn from that, do more outreach in and around the Mckinsey Park area, reconcile what the subcommittee raised as issues for Mckinsey, and then maybe a year from now, do a fenced in South Los Altos. So if anyone is getting ready to make a motion, Councilmember Weinberg, I would ask if you could please do two separate motions.
Excuse me, did the city attorney want to say something before I go to Councilmember Weinberg?
No, I was just going to say, please do two motions, because I think we can't really get everything caught up in one motion. And so for the direction, I think it's best for me and staff to have two motions. So we know. Okay,
we'd end up potentially with three, because if we have separate motions for each area and then a third motion having to do with the ordinance and budget, we would end up with three motions. So just to be clear. Yeah. So Councilmember Weinberg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In deference to Councilmember Flagler, I will endeavor to make two motions. Let me take the hard one first, which I think is Hillview. I move that the council adopt staff's recommendation to establish a dog park at the Hillview Community Center by the soccer field. But I want to pause it there. I think that Lynette had a really interesting idea. And I would love to see staff give us some of the specifics of both sides of the field. I'm staring right now at a satellite photo of that field. And if the dog run were to be moved over to the western side, I don't know if the soccer field could be moved all the way over toward the parking lot because there are some trees there, unless this picture's out of date, but I don't think that it is. But I think that it would be in the best interest of the community for staff to look at establishing the dog park on either side of the field so that we could really have better information.
Councilmember Liang, do you want to add something there?
Thank you, Councilmember Weinberg. I appreciate you recognizing that that should be looked at, and I would like to second your motion.
So we have and I think we would want to, I guess this is my question back to the maker of the motion. Is your motion to approve the development of one fenced-in dog park in North Los Altos located adjacent to the Civic Center soccer field at one or the other, either the west or east end? And then, but pending staff research, and you want it to come back for a final siting? I know you said this was going to be hard, but then I think we also need to incorporate in the motion that we've made findings that the project is exempt from the requirements of CEQA with the sections that are noted in our agenda. And now I've put you on the spot, and I'm sorry.
I know, and I hate to have to bring this back for another round of debate and consideration.
It looks like our city manager might have an idea. He had his hand up and then took it down really fast, so maybe he changed his mind.
I had changed my mind, Mayor, but now you've called on me. So I think this item has to come back anyway for an ordinance change and for a final citing. So I would just say if council is comfortable with this specific location, let staff look at multiple configurations that take the soccer field into account and don't limit it to just one or the other. Let us look at the entire area again, and we'll come back, and then we'll be able to notice the neighbors this way. And then council can look at 1, 2, or maybe another design. So
Councilmember Weinberg, are you comfortable with amending your motion to indicate that we want a dog park as at or around the Hillview soccer field with a final siting to come back to council based on additional staff work?
Yes, the city manager opened the valve that relieved the pressure. So I will amend my motion to incorporate the language that you so eloquently summarized.
Well, I don't know about eloquent. And the second, what will you accept the amendment as well?
I accept that second.
Thank you. And Vice Mayor, what do you want to add here?
A friendly amendment I would like to understand explicitly. I think the city manager vocalized it, but that, what the process is to actually get the neighbors noticed. I mean, this is part of what you'll do, right? So do we need to have that in the motion, or to have staff do additional due diligence around the placement of a dog park at Hillview soccer field?
Vice Mayor, I would have discussed this with staff, but my immediate idea would be to notify all of the residences that are around the Civic Center site specifically, and let them know of the discussion that will take place, highlight multiple areas on the soccer field, and let them know the date that it would be before council.
Okay, thank you.
And City Attorney?
So we're not there yet because we've got a couple more motions, but do you all anticipate that we're going to come back and make the determination of where it's going to go on Hillview, and then we will come back with that ordinance? I'm just trying to get, I know I'm a little bit ahead of everybody, but I'm trying to figure out how. I think you're going to have a meeting to make a final determination on Hillview, and then we'll be coming back with an ordinance. At least that's how I see it. But
Seems to be we should be able to handle the ordinance and the final citing decision at the same meeting.
Well, why would the citing decision affect the ordinance?
Because we're going to have to, I mean, it's okay, we're going to have a dogs can be in a dog park off leash at Hillview, and we're going to have some sort of description of where they're going to be, but I'll work on it. I mean, it just seems like that's why we didn't bring an ordinance back this meeting, because we didn't know which sites you were going to pick. And so once you pick some sites, then we'll come back with an ordinance.
I mean, what if the ordinance simply says at the fenced in designated dog park adjacent to the soccer field?
Yeah, maybe we could do like a little map, exhibit A or something like that. But okay, I'm just trying to get it specific enough so we have where it is going to be. That's all.
Let me just take a show of hands with council. Is it your preference to try and deal with the final citing in Hillview and the ordinance, the final citing at Hillview and the ordinance at the same meeting? If yes, please raise your hand.
I mean, I think we should definitely
council
schedule it that way.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the sense of council, how we'd like to try and have you work it out. Okay, so can we now proceed with a motion if we've also incorporated the language with respect to the exemption regarding CEQA? And the maker's fine with that? All right.
Yeah, yes, I'm sorry. I thought that the motion had already been made. I thought you were calling for a vote.
No, when I do that, I'm going to ask the city clerk to call for the vote. So unless the city attorney comes back and tells me we're not ready, then we're going to go ahead and have a vote on the motion on the floor.
Yeah, the motion, as you said, Mayor, the motion includes the CEQA exemption findings. Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
As stated in the agenda. So city clerk, I think we're ready for a vote.
Okay. Councilmember Flagger,
Yes.
Councilmember Weinberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Lee Ing,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Meadows,
Yes.
and Mayor Enander.
Yes, yes, yes.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
Okay, now I'm looking at my colleagues. Do you want to continue and barrel through the next part of this, or do you want to break?
I would like to finish it.
Okay.
If we can finish it.
All right. Is anyone prepared with another motion? Councilmember Weinberg?
Okay. I move that council direct staff to proceed with the fenced-in dog park as recommended by staff at the Mckinsey, it's the west location, the triangle, and that the council find that this is categorically exempt from CEQA.
Okay, and do we have a second? I will second. Councilmember Lee Ing, you have your hand raised.
I would like to have a friendly amendment. So could you repeat your motion again and let me see how I could amend it?
I'm moving that council direct staff to move forward with their recommendation to establish a fenced-in dog park at the Mckinsey West location, which is the triangle.
So can we amend it to say 6 months after, or I'm trying to figure out the timeline as to kind of giving us after the implementation, like 3 months after the implementation of the Hillview one. So that way we can get some quick, we can learn lessons from it before we move forward. Would you be willing to do 6 months or 3 months?
I'm sorry, are you suggesting that we have Mckinsey only be 6 months, or that we don't allow?
No.
Okay.
To then develop Mckinsey a few months after so we can learn. That's okay.
What I think I'm hearing is the council member suggesting that the development at Mckinsey follow Hillview by several months.
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
I don't think that's the best way to proceed, but I would be, it's not what I want, but I would be amenable to a friendly amendment that puts, say, a 1-year time limit on it, or have it come back to the council within a year.
Councilmember Flagger.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just not sure why we would make such a motion tonight. If the motion is in 6 months or a year, we move forward with the Mckinsey site. I mean, if we want to say in 6 months, let's assess Hillview and then determine if we want to move forward with Mckinsey. To me, that makes more sense as opposed to making the motion tonight to say in 6 months or a year, we'll then move forward with Mckinsey. So
No, I agree with you. I think I did not make myself clear. There was discussion earlier about maybe making the fenced-in dog park a pilot program rather than a permanent program. And that was not part of the motion for Hillview. But if it would get a third vote for Mckinsey, I would be amenable to that. But I don't think it makes sense to pass a motion today that limits construction of Mckinsey until some point in the future.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I don't think we should treat them differently. So I think this goes back to what Councilmember Weinberg maybe said, where they're either both pilots or they're both, yeah, we're going to do this. We can still get information on them, obviously, whether they're working or not. But I don't want one to be permanent and one to be a pilot. That just doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Oh, I agree. I only threw that out there if that's what it's going to take to get a third vote.
Then I think that the council member Weinberg is not accepting an amendment or a friendly amendment, and that the motion on the table as originally proposed and as I seconded stand, which is to approve the establishment of a dog park at Mckinsey West as recommended in the staff report. So I think we're ready for a vote unless anyone has any other comment.
Now, let's add before I vote, Mayor, that my preference, as I said during earlier comments, would be for us, and I think this is what Councilmember Lee Eng said as well, for us to do at least 1 year of the Hillview, assess, look back, learn, and then move forward with Mckinsey. So that's why I will not be supporting the motion, because I do not support doing them at the same time, to start them off at the same time.
Councilmember Meadows?
I think it's an artificial, it's an unfair assessment to put all the burden on one site. And if you don't have 2 sites, then you're really not, there's so many pros and cons with everything that we talk about, that there's no perfect way to do it. But if you put all the burden on what is essentially a dog run, you know, how are we going to, we're going to get more information from having two of these. One is more of an open space area. One is a dog run. And sorry, dog runs aren't necessarily pejorative, but they're different than a park. So I don't support staggering it, because you're just putting too much burden. We saw this with the pilot. All the dogs are in that one place. So,
and I think we're ready for a vote. So City Clerk, would you please call the vote?
Sure. Vice Mayor Meadows.
And so we're Councilmember Weinberg's original motion that the mayor seconded.
Yes.
Yes.
Your vote is yes.
Yes.
Councilmember Flagger.
No.
Councilmember Lee Ing.
Yes.
Mayor Enander.
Yes.
Councilmember Weinberg.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes 4-1.
Thank you all. And now I would entertain a motion to direct staff to come back to us with an ordinance necessary to implement fenced-in dog park with the necessary amendments to our current code, as well as the appropriate budget action to allocate $100,000 to the initial fencing and making initially operational the two dog parks that we've identified in our prior two motions. And does the city attorney want to weigh in here before we go any farther?
You know, what I was thinking is, because when we started the pilot program, we had language in that that if there was anything that had turned out to be some sort of nuisance or some unforeseen problems, that the city manager could terminate it, or, you know, bring it back to council or something. I maybe leave some of that language in there, some stopgap language. So if something unforeseen comes up, we can fix it or stop it, and then maybe go forward with some corrective actions. Like we find out that the fencing isn't right or something else isn't right, we can put a pause and maybe fix it that way. But I'll have to look at some language and try to come back with something, because I do want to build in some flexibility.
So are you, pardon me?
It will be in the ordinance, yeah.
So are you asking that as part of our direction to staff, that we ask that staff incorporate that, or are you just providing information?
I'm just providing information that's what I want to do. And if you don't think that that's necessary, you can tell me. But I'd rather put it in the ordinance and then have you guys say, no, we don't think it's necessary. But I do think we should probably build in a lot of flexibility, since we don't really know how these are going to work. And so that's my 2 cents on it.
Okay, and I'm going to take Councilmember Lee Eng first, and then Councilmember Weinberg.
So I'd like to move the motion that you had just so eloquently made for us.
Okay, Councilmember Weinberg.
Second.
Great. All right. Any further discussion? City Clerk, would you please call motion? Call the roll.
Sure. Councilmember Lee Ing.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Meadows.
Yes.
Councilmember Weinberg.
Yes.
Mayor Enander.
Yes.
And Councilmember Flagger.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes 5-0.
I want to congratulate all of my colleagues and the staff, and again, all of those who currently and formerly served on the Parks and Recreation Commission. I want to thank everyone who has participated in any way, shape, or form to the Parks and Rec efforts, other letters, other correspondence, other meetings that have gone on for years and years. We all know that this is not a perfect solution to meet every need for every person of this city, whether or not you own a dog, whether or not you want to run them off leash. But this represents a very substantial step for our city. And I'm just really happy with all of this and happy with all the effort that everyone has put forward. So thank you to staff, especially. I know it's been, for Manny, it's been a long, long time. All right, I think we can go through information items. If anyone has an information item. Councilmember Lee Eng, did you have something?
Sorry, mine was for future agenda items.
Okay, information items going once. I don't see anything. Okay, then we'll take Councilmember Lee Eng first on directions for future agenda items.
Well, I don't know if everyone is aware that there is an initiative to counter some of the concerns that people have regarding SB9 and SB10. So I would like to have it on future discussion so that we can decide if we would like to support that and to take a position and then decide if we want to make a resolution on the position we take. Oh, sorry, did you not hear me?
No, I was the one who was muted when I went to talk. My apologies. Councilmember Flagger.
Oh, Mayor, I raised my hand to request 2 future agenda items before Councilmember Liang made her request. So I'll wait until she's finished with her proposed future agenda items before I go through my list.
Did you have anything else, Councilmember Liang?
No, that item, and I appreciate support for that. No staff work needed.
I will consider supporting that. I would like to chat with the city manager about it before I make a final concurrence. Councilmember Flagger.
Thank you, Mayor. And my first future agenda item actually ties in really well with that request. At one of or more recent council meetings, I think it was the December 14th meeting where we were talking about the legislative subcommittee. I know there were at least 2, if not 3 council members who expressed an interest in revisiting the format of the legislative subcommittee going forward. It is currently a standing committee. And I think as part of the discussion, it would be what the format should look like and whether or not we want it to continue as a standing committee. And I will just say, I think Councilmember Lee Eng's request should fall under that discussion, but I will keep them separate and ask as a future agenda item that we agendize discussing the legislative subcommittee going forward.
Okay, and it looks like Councilmember Weinberg, of course, would like to see that happen as well. Thank you. And then what you said you had a couple of items, I think.
So the second one, Mayor, I realized again at the December 14th, we had so much going on. I actually didn't realize that 2 of my assignments conflicted. I'm currently assigned to the Parks and Rec Commission and also the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Board, and both meet at 7 p.m. on Wednesdays. And I'm also on the so my preference and request, because I serve on the executive committee for SVCE, is to remain on SVCE and then have. So we need to agendize it. I know we can't do it here. Jolie's going to jump on soon and tell me I can't discuss it. So my request for a future agenda item is to the reassignment of the Parks and Rec Commission Council Liaison position.
Okay, we will agendize that for our next meeting. What I would ask is that you review the assignments of your colleagues and see if you can't talk one of them into an amiable switch that I could support. And then we'll bring that back for affirmation. Anyone else? Okay, then I think the closing belongs to staff. So, Mr. England, is there anything you'd like to say to us?
Thank you, Mayor. I have no reports.
All right, then the next time we will meet will be next Tuesday for the first of our 2 planned days for planning. You have an agenda, and I believe the staff report is out now as well.
Yes, Mayor, we posted the agenda and the staff report this morning. And as noted on the agenda, both dates have now been moved to virtual. Considering the current variant and wave that we're going through, we didn't feel comfortable meeting in person.
Yeah, and I have to say, I have to endorse reluctantly, because I think we all would like to have done this in person, but under the circumstances, we need to be virtual. So we will see you all next Tuesday. And unless someone has something final, we stand adjourned.
Well, note the time. Congratulations, Mayor, for an early meeting. Thank you.
Thank you all. Good night.
Good night.